What if I told you that the Galapagos Islands, a tropical paradise off the coast of South America, were quite similar to the greater Yellowstone ecosystem in landlocked Wyoming, where temperatures remain sub zero for most of the winter? Both ecosystems boast incredible wildlife and geology, as well as vast amounts of tourists coming to visit it. Yet, even deeper, both national parks are prized success stories of a greater conservation movement to protect our nature. Both ecosystems surprisingly share geologic similarities, common animal adaptations, and are important success stories of the same movement. But even deeper, I hope to answer the question, what makes the greater Yellowstone ecosystem and Galapagos Islands similarly iconic and unique faces of the conservation movement? To do this, I will break down their similarities and unique facets into three main sections: geology, how the ecosystems were formed; biology, animals that live in the ecosystems and how they adapt to living there; and human culture and conservation, how humans interact with and help preserve these ecosystems. The Galapagos Islands and Greater Yellowstone ecosystem both involve volcanic hotspots. You might be wondering, what is a volcanic hotspot? I have an answer for you. Volcanic hotspots are unusually hot parts of Earth's mantle that push through the crust to form volcanoes, away from plate boundaries and often in the middle of large tectonic plates. Hawaii, the Galapagos, and Yellowstone are all hotspots. As the tectonic plate containing the hotspot moves, it moves the previously erupted volcano down, and the hotspot forms a new volcano. This means that often hotspot volcanoes are formed in lines. In Yellowstone, there is a massive volcanic hotspot that is part of a supervolcano. If this volcano were to erupt, scientists project a massive blast 2,500 times the size of Mount St. Helens eruption in 1980, which killed 57 people. The heat from the supervolcano results in volcanic hot springs and geysers, which animals also use for heat in the cold Wyoming winters. The Galapagos Islands are also formed via volcanic hotspot. The volcanic hotspot they are on is situated under the Nazca Tectonic Plate, which is currently moving under the South American Plate. This means that the hotspot is moving around quickly and new islands are being created in the northwest. Also, the volcanoes are forming in an interesting grid pattern showing the movement of the hotspot northwest. Galapagos' origin as a hotspot formed island is key to the amazing adaptation of animals on the islands. The Galapagos Islands are close enough to the South American mainland that occasionally animals caught on pieces of driftwood could have blown over to the Galapagos. Nevertheless, the Galapagos were far enough away that the animals in the Galapagos adapted uniquely and independently of South American influence. There is an interesting common idea of animals in both areas having unique adaptations that are key to their survival, especially given how the weather can get extreme in both areas. Charles Darwin's idea of natural selection is proven true in these ecosystems with some pretty interesting evolutionary traits appearing. One example of animal adaptations is how blue footed boobies adapt to the prey they hunt. Now, blue footed boobies have super sharp aerodynamic beaks that allow them to torpedo themselves into the water to get fish. You can see in this clip the booby dives beak first into the water. Without this sharp beak, the blue footed booby would struggle to dive so it could hunt fish. Conversely, bald eagle talons have muscular toes, allowing them to be able to carry large fish and small rodents that they capture back to their nests. Also, their talons are sharp, which allows them to hurt their prey, which they grab them. After snatching the prey from their blind spot, the eagle can use its curved beak to tear through the flesh of the animal. Also, mooses and marine iguanas adapted very different snouts due to where they are feeding. Mooses develop super long snouts to feed in the underwater riparian zones that they live in. On the other hand, marine iguanas develop very flat faces so they can feed and gnaw on corals that grow on rocks. Marine iguanas graze underwater, so having a flat face, like you can see in this video, allows them to eat the corals from all angles on the rock. On the topic of feeding, certain tortoises adapted to allow a saddle on the top of their shells so they could reach to higher up plants. The race of their shell also means that having a shell is useless as it can't hide from their predators. Nevertheless, the tortoises would starve if they couldn't reach up to eat the cacti because the islands they live on do not have grasses. Interestingly, certain animals adapted very similarly to the different ecosystems. Both tortoises and mooses use the warmth coming from the ground. Tortoises lay their eggs in the soil and use the warmth coming from the soil to incubate their eggs. In fact, the heat of the soil and the air determines the gender of the eggs. 28 Celsius is a boy and 29.5 degrees Celsius is a girl. Mooses like to bury themselves in the snow to stay warm. The ground level under the layers of snow is warmer than the surface of the snow during cold winter days, so mooses will dig a pit to sleep in at night. The ways humans have interacted with both of these incredible ecosystems is rife with controversy. In the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, there is an elk refuge for the large herds of elk to feed on during the wintertime. It only covers 25% of the original winter grazing space that the elk used to graze on, so there is not enough winter grasses for the elk to eat on the refuge in order to survive the winter. So the people running that refuge partially feed the elk by dumping feed out of tractors and lines. The elk congregating by the feed causes a higher spread of disease, but not feeding the elk could result in the elk venturing onto cattle ranches and into the nearby town of Jackson, wreaking havoc on roads, agriculture, and infrastructure. The elk feeding brings up the question of what should humans do, if anything, to make up for the damage they forced upon the ecosystems by industrialization? There is no problemless answer to this question. A positive example of humans interfering to help the environment can be seen in the Galapagos at the Charles Darwin Research Center. The Galapagos giant tortoises were hunted for meat by the many whalers who came by the Galapagos, causing many tortoise subspecies to be near extinct. Scientists go out into the field and collect tortoise eggs and bring them to the Charles Darwin Station, where they hatch the eggs and protect them until they are roughly 10 years old, where they then release the tortoises back into the wild, helping grow the tortoise population. Although this could be seen as interfering with nature, they do it because humans caused the tortoise population to go nearly extinct. Importantly, though, the Galapagos and Yellowstone both have a deeper legacy of conservation. In the 1800s, Charles Darwin visited the Galapagos Islands and was inspired by the many unique animal adaptations to write The Origin of Species, publishing his theories on natural selection and evolution, which was revolutionary at the time. This writing drove people to want to see and preserve the unique ecosystems Darwin said developed so intricately. Yellowstone National Park was established as the first national park by Congress in 1872. This made a sizable part of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem federally protected land, and when John Rockefeller donated the land for Grand Teton National Park 57 years later, another chunk of the GYE was protected. The conservation of this land is key to protecting the unique ecosystem of the area. The Galapagos Islands are also federally protected land by the government of Ecuador, with 97% of the islands being federally protected land. This is also crucial to preserving the ecosystems of the Galapagos. Now, you may be curious, why does creating national parks and preserving ecosystems matter? I have visited both the Galapagos and Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, and I can attest that the preserved nature of both areas is incredible. It's important to remember how important conserving nature is. These beautiful ecosystems are much needed reminders of that. So I encourage you to visit a national park and fight to preserve nature.